Hi, I'm Angela Nicholson, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to correct optical and perspective distortions. It can help you turn an image like this one into one like this. This image was taken with a wide-angled lens, and it's been shot from low down with the camera tipped back so the whole of the tower has been recorded. Now you can see this makes the buildings look like they're falling backwards. The buildings to the left and right are also leaning in quite dramatically at their tops. This perspective distortion can be corrected quite easily using the lens correction filter, which is just up here. Now, because this was a channel mixer conversion to monochrome, we're seeing a colour image, but it will be converted to black and white when we've finished. Now we want the custom tab, and the first thing we're going to correct is the perspective distortion. So we'll use the vertical perspective, and we just need to move the slider until we get the result that we're happy with. Just keep moving it. As you can see, the building's starting to straighten up. Now if I go too far, it starts to get bigger at the top than it is at the bottom. So just play around with it until you're happy with the result. It can be tricky to adjust the image by eye, so it's helpful to show a grid. Just tick this box down here, and we can adjust the size of the grid as we want. Make it finer or larger depending on what you want. And you can also move the grid around when this icon is selected, so it can match up with the edge of the building. As you can see here, it's still not quite right, so I'm just going to adjust the perspective a little more. There we go, I think we're about right. I'll just get rid of the grid. There are a couple of other features that are worth noting here. First is the straighten tool, which we can use to straighten horizons, or in this case buildings. So if I just click and drag along the top of this building, you see it applies a slight rotation. But if I went along this building, it's obviously going to make that level and the image not going to be right. But we can quickly correct it again by dragging along the top of a building that we know should be straight. So there we go. Now you may have noticed that when I adjust the perspective, the image is growing and shrinking, and it's automatically cropping. Now the reason for this, if I go to the auto correction tab here, is because I've got the auto scale image box checked. If I untick it, you can see now that we get some blank areas of the image, and it needs to be cropped. So if you find that you're making adjustments and you're getting this effect, just visit the auto correction tab and check this box. If I return to the original image, you'll notice a problem that we see quite often with wide-angle lenses and also with shots taken at full aperture, is that the corners of the image are a little bit dark. But we can adjust this using the Vignetting Tool. Now if I move it to the right, the slider to the right, we brighten the corners, and that's correcting the effect. But quite often it's useful to do the opposite and darken the corners, because that can give a bit of emphasis to your subject. And we can adjust the size of the midpoint, the area that stays bright, using this slider here. Now that I'm fairly happy with the image, I can just click OK and the filter will render. And as you can see, it's restored the black and white effect. This image is suffering from geometric distortion, and if I drag a guide across, you can see quite clearly that that building appears to be bowing, and it would never do that in normal life. But we can sort this out quite easily using the lens correction filter. Photoshop has a number of profiles for specific cameras and lenses installed in it, and this allows automatic correction of problems like this. So as you can see here, the geometric distortion box is checked. If I just untick it, you can see how the image changes, and it's automatically dealing with that bowing. Similarly, I can correct vignetting, and you see how the corners just brighten and darken as I check that box. It's very useful. Photoshop has automatically identified the camera and the lens that has been used for this image using the EXIF data, but if for some reason it doesn't happen, you can use these drop-down boxes to select the correct model. It's also possible to correct the distortion manually. So if I just uncheck this box, you can see the original image, and then go to the custom option, you can then use this distortion slider, and as you can see, the image is flexing and straightening. We can also show the grid to give us a guide. I'm quite happy with this image now, so I'm going to click OK. And then we have the final result. Converging verticals can add a real sense of drama to your images, but the perspective can make it quite tricky to clone out unwanted objects. Photoshop's answer to this is to use the vanishing point filter, but the first step is to create a new layer. I'm going to call it vanishing point. With this layer selected, open the vanishing point dialog box. The next step is to draw a plane that defines the perspective. First, make sure that this icon is selected, and then draw a box which defines the area you want to work in. Now, you can be fairly rough at first, but you need to be accurate ultimately. So just zoom in and then select the Edit Plane tool and drag these boxes until they follow the lines that define the building. Once it goes blue, you know you're heading in the right direction. Okay, there we go. Now we can zoom out and drag this plane right the way down the building. We can also drag it left and right to cover the areas we need to cover, but I'm just going to clone out these window cleaners for now. Once you've dragged the box out, it's worth checking that it matches up with the lines in the building, and as you can see here it's not quite right, so I'm just going to drag that across and I'm going to bring that up so that's following that line. The next step for me is to remove this window cleaner, and I'm going to use the marquee tool, and with that selected I just drag a box which should be big enough to cover him, hold Alt down and drag it over the figure and then release. As you can see, it's adjusted the perspective. I can now scroll back up to tackle the other areas. So again, I'm going to use the marquee tool, make a selection. As you can see, it makes it automatically the right shape, and then just holding Alt down, can drag it down and cover them up. There we go. So when I've finished, I can just hit OK. The vanishing point filter has done a good job with helping me clone out those window cleaners. If I wanted, I could carry on and even clone out areas such as this building, but I'm going to stop here for now. Because the cloned areas are contained within the vanishing points layers here, I can make any adjustments that I need to just on those points, so it's a really handy tool.